Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you. You know, today we're going to be talking about the art of sales. Many people today, they really don't want anything to do with sales, and sales has kind of gotten a bad rap over the last few decades. In fact, every company out there, at some level of that company, there's a sale taking place or service being provided to generate revenue for the rest of that business. But many people don't understand that their security of their family and their security of their future is based on sales. And today we're going to be talking with sales professional Dave Clark. Dave's been out there for over 30 years. Dave, very successful entrepreneur and salesman. And we're also going to be here discussing not only what it takes to be a professional salesman, but what it takes to build a team of professional salesmen and go to the elite level. Back. Today on our show we have entrepreneur Dave Clark. Dave is a sales specialist, so please give him a big hand, Mr. Dave Clark.
How you doing?
My friend, how are you? First of all, Dave, I appreciate you being a fan of the show. I love what you're doing. And tell me what I owe you later, would you?
They told me I get free coffee.
Oh, free coffee. Well, we have it. You know, and speaking of coffee, that's not a setup. But speaking of coffee, we have our coffee provided by our very good friends Dave and Becky Schultes from Organo Gold. It's a healthy coffee. Actually, this here is Cafe Supreme, and it's got ginseng and all these other healthy ones. I'm drinking the regular black coffee with a little bit of vanilla. So, and I think we start our guests on water, and then we kind of upgrade you from there. But how have you been, my friend?
Very good, very good.
Good, good. And how's the world of sales? Still out there?
Oh, it is. It is. It's still there. Still doing good.
Me and Dave have a very similar sales background. Know a lot of the same people, right?
Yep.
So we both came out as a very young guy. I was fortunate enough to have some really successful people interested in me for different math abilities. And I was really privileged to get in this great room of people and have these very successful people take an interest in me. But a guy, we talked about this, gave me some really good advice. And he says, you know, with what your skill is, you're going to have access to the greatest information on the planet and the best mentors on the planet. But he said that, you know, knowledge is an experience. Education is an experience. So he says you need to get some experience. And our recommendation is get into direct sales. Maybe even the hard, you know, canvassing. Do something hard, because if you want to learn business and you want to learn people, that's the experience you need. And I actually took his advice. I think I was 18 and a half. I started selling vacuum cleaners door to door on a straight commission, and eventually worked my way up to numerous companies. And I know you have a very similar experience.
Yes, I started out selling alarms door to door, knocking door to door. Never done it before. And the one thing is you learn very quickly that you've got to develop an attitude.
Yeah.
No quit, you know, just keep going at it. The biggest thing is overcoming your own fears.
Yeah.
I always found out the hardest door to get out of was my door.
That's right. Or get in the car.
Or get in the car.
Yeah.
But it took a while to get, once you get that and understand the concept of everything in sales is a numbers game.
Yeah, and many people feel like, you know, sales isn't really a profession. It's like, you know, I got laid off from my corporate job, so, you know, in the meantime, while I'm looking, I'll take this little sales job on the side. And really, that's the wrong way to look at it. Sales is a profession. It's really a profession, and it's still the highest paid profession. You know, if you talk to some really successful people like, you know, Bill Gates or Warren Buffett, and you ask them, are you into the market, are you into technology, or are you into sales? That would, you know, they're into sales. Brokering those big deals between other companies, that's really the highest paid profession.
But it's also one of the most secure professions.
It really is.
It doesn't matter where you go, whatever product
Completely
you're selling,
mobile.
if you're a professional. Now, being a professional doesn't mean you go in and take a few classes and do a canned presentation. The one thing that I learned when I started sales was it took a lot of hard work. What you had to do was I took and went to seminars, I talked to salespeople, I rode with them. I mean, you really have to put your time in. It's no different than anything else. Now, the pay is just as good as if you're a doctor or a lawyer, and you know what? It takes you just as long to get your skill or your profession to that level.
Well, that's the thing, is many people will commit to a certain amount of education, and they'll say, you know, I'm going to go to school 8 years to have this professional income. or I can go in sales. Well, the great thing I like about sales is most people are willing to teach it to you, and in a year or two, you can get a great education and be at that professional income level. I know that we have talked, that everybody out there at some level, there's a sales team of most companies. But as far as great professional salesmen, it's a pretty small world. I know we lived in different parts of the country.
And we knew people.
And many of your, in fact, a couple of the people that like you had looked to along the way, I had worked with over the years, and we had lived, literally across the
higher
US.
up you get, the one thing I've noticed, the higher up you get, the smaller the
same names start getting thrown around, and certainly one of those names is Dave Clark. Now, I know, Dave, you're semi-retired. You've been out there for over 30 years, and I want to talk a little bit about your background and kind of how the game has changed since 2008. Why don't we take a quick commercial break, and then we'll get right in, and we'll talk a little bit more with Dave about what it takes to be a sales professional. More when we return. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back. I'm here with entrepreneur Dave Clark and my dear friend Margot Bush. And Dave, we've been talking a lot about the mindset of a salesman, and how self-education is really necessary. I know that when I was throwing into it, there was a few guys that knew what they were doing, and they were making incredible money. And then 90% of the team was starving to death. They didn't have gas money, they were hurting. And the few pulled me aside and they said, listen, man, you better self-educate. Here's Zig Ziglar, here's Tommy Hopkins. And what I learned very quickly, I think it took me an eviction to learn this, but what I learned is if you don't self-educate in the direct sales arena, you're going to be out of business and out of your house overnight. You're thrown into the pool.
The one thing you find out is, like I've always heard, is 80% of the people are doing 20% of the business.
Right.
20% of the people are doing 80% of the business. That's the ones that educate themselves. The ones that make it a true profession.
Right. And tell us a little bit, I was actually running companies, and I was in that world till probably early 2002, 2003. And around 2004, I started seeing writing on the wall financially, and I kind of transitioned into seminars and other things. But I know that when you're selling a product or a service that has, there's a financing capabilities, that has been a big problem, particularly since 2008, because during the meltdown, a lot of companies lost their financing. Did you experience that? I
experienced that, and one of the things is that you have to have more than one finance company. It's like anything else, you have to have backup plans. And if I hadn't have gotten 2 or 3 or 4 finance companies, you wouldn't make it, because one will go down, or one will shut their financing down or make it hard. So you really have to be prepared for what's going to happen.
What would you say that the biggest challenge is right now? I mean, we talked a little bit beforehand, and I know that you were saying that setting appointments, that was always the trick in our business. As you mentioned, it's kind of a numbers game, but you have to have X amount of qualified prospects to see, and then if you did that, you could always count on a certain amount of revenue. And I know when I was in the game, we were batting about a 75% hold-up ratio. So if we set 4 appointments in one day, 3 would hold up on a bad day, 2 would hold up, 2 would cancel. What's it like out there now?
Today, it's a lot different. You're having to probably book 4 appointments to get 1.
Wow.
I'm having to knock a lot more doors. The biggest problem is you have the economy. People are afraid to let you in their homes, or think they're going to have to buy something. And so the whole market
Security, I'm sure, also is a risk.
Security, yeah.
Letting people in your home.
And knocking doors, is tough.
Yep.
The biggest thing is that you have to make it fun.
Right.
The whole key is if you go out there, I got to do this, I got to do this, you're not going to be able to do it.
Well, and I know personally with you, you choose to go out there and sell. And over the years, you've had teams put together, but you've actually chosen to just work very little, go out there for a few hours, and you're more of a sharpshooter instead of a shotgun guy.
Right, there's 2 types. You can do a lot, or after you get experience and know what you're doing, I can drive into a neighborhood, and I can pretty much spot the houses that I want to call on. And after you talk to the people at the door, you find out whether you really want to talk to, to go any further. But organizations today are really having a hard time. 2 things. Hard to get people that will knock doors.
Sure.
The telemarketing law, when they ended that in the early 2002 or 3,
Yeah, heard a lot of
that
companies.
killed a lot of, in fact, it shut me down.
Yeah.
And I had to go back, change my strategy, go
Yep.
back to what we used to do, and that was knocking doors.
Right.
And if you don't know how to change or find somebody that can teach you how to do that, then you'll die right then. So
Right.
I'm still here. It's just that my strategy changed.
Right.
And I went back to knocking doors, is what
Right.
I originally started out doing, and so I was able to
Yeah.
do it again.
Well, and I think that, you know, the game did change a lot after '08, but as you mentioned, you just changed your strategy. You know, you got to go back and find what was working. And, you know, I was actually in the time where the telemarketing was the big thing too. We'd have hundreds of leads, and then all of a sudden laws change, and it's like, what do we do now? But you gotta go with it. And would you say that even now, if a person got a sales job, let's say even straight commission, is it possible for somebody to go out there and in the first year earn a very professional income?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It all depends on them. If they're willing to put the effort in. Sales, if you have a good teaching, a good product, and it's an honest, ethical company, you'll make it. And you'll make it easily.
Well, I completely agree. And, you know, backstage we were talking a little bit about how difficult it is to put a team together these days. When you mention the word, I mean, right when they answer the phone, they say, is this sales? And then they're gone, you know. So it's difficult to bring people in that are qualified. But, you know, I learned a long time ago that if you ask 3 questions about somebody, and whether you're putting a sales team together or you're going to do a joint venture with another company, or you're going to form even a multi-million-dollar partnership, before you get into business with anybody, I was taught years ago to always ask 3 questions. And the first thing that you ask is, what do they want? You know, what's their vision? Or you could say, what's their motive? And the reason I always find out their motive is because, you know, everybody out there, all the self-help guys talk about motivation and getting somebody motivated. But if you think about the word motivation, it's derived from the word motive. So if somebody doesn't have a strong motive, or it's not their motive, it's their husbands or their wives or for their kids, you literally cannot motivate these people. You know what I'm saying? And I remember when I would sit down with big corporations and I would ask them, you know, what gets you jazzed? What's your thing? And they would say, you know, well, what do you want? To keep my job. Well, past that, what do you want? Not to be fired. Well, after that, what do you want? Just to provide for my kids. Okay, that's your kids. What do you want? And doing that for corporations, what I found the overwhelming answer would be is a lot of adults would say, you know, I have no idea. I haven't been asked that for years. I haven't thought about myself for years. Let me get back to you. And that's a real problem, because if we don't have something that we're fired up about or have strong motive, then really we can't be motivated. And I know that we're pressed for time, but the second point, I'll make 2 points. The second point is that when you hear their motive or you hear their vision, the big thing you have to assess is, where was the originality of that vision? What was the birthplace of that vision when they told you their story? And the reason why that's important is because under great pressure, people always revert back to the originality of things. So it's kind of like a boxer. I know you used to do martial arts, we talked about, but a boxer, if you take a guy that's never been in a fight in his life and you teach him how to technically box, the first time he gets slugged in the face and gets that stress, the only thing he knows is jab, jab, punch. He knows how to box. But if you take a guy that's brawling every weekend in the alley and you teach him how to box, as soon as he gets slugged in the face, he tackles you. So under great pressure, people revert back to the originality. And I've seen this a lot of times in business where people will create a partnership, and the pressure might even be good. They might plan this multi-million-dollar venture that actually works, and there's millions of dollars coming in. And then all of a sudden, under that pressure, they revert back to originality of, was the vision put around making money first and then helping people, or helping a lot of people and then making money? So I think that there's both.
One of the things that I found, it isn't always the money that motivates people.
Right.
It's the recognition.
That's right.
And it's also being a part of something. So if you can get that in your business, you can educate them as you go along. But
Absolutely.
You're right.
Well, we want to look at a person's motive. We want to look at where they started, make sure they're about helping people first. But there's nothing wrong with making a lot of money. Dave, I appreciate you being on the show. Margo,
Sure.
Thanks for stopping by. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
And guys, that's our show tonight. We appreciate you tuning in. And don't forget to get involved in your local community and be forgiving of others. Good night, everybody.